Alright, so I played a game recently called Terrinoth Heroes of Descent. I guess that's the best game I had to delete for stupid reasons. It's buggy, simply put, and the developer of this is clearly using AI on the Steam forums to reply, which is depressing to say the least. Anyway, it's an RPG, very much D&D style, but with their own spin on it. Apparently they have their own pen and paper thing too, but I've never heard of it. Anyway, unlike Baldur's 3 or anything similar, it's not about dice rolls or annoying long rest or other BS that always pisses me off. Instead, it's closer to Divinity Original Sin 2, but with limited charges for some of the more powerful skills. Makes combat a lot more complicated, as you can waste a lot of skills early, which not have them later when enemies get reinforcements, for example. It is a great idea, which is absolutely necessary too, as there are only 5 skills or so available to each character, reducing the complexity significantly. Kind of a mix and match, so it can be a bit dull, especially with prolonged fights, when you can only use 2 abilities. Still, it was enjoyable enough, as the synergies and leveling open up new opportunities. So the first major problem for me was the fact that it's very D&D-like style of doing things. Meaning dungeon crawling. From the limited scope of what I have seen, a lot of pen and paper D&D involves exactly that. Sometimes there is talk outside the missions or an occasional visit to the tavern, yada yada, but overall it's just delving deep and fighting monsters. This game does that, a lot, and nothing else really. Sometimes there are puzzles and events that might have different solutions with different characters, but overall it's extremely basic. One good thing though is that it doesn't seem to have any kind of stat requirement or dice rolls, so it's purely choice and effect. I blindly clicked everything and was punished accordingly. I've fought and made a wrong choice and got a stat debuff. I've completed an event as it was hinted and got a reward. It's just a little too basic still, but I have definitely enjoyed it. Aside from that, the combat wasn't always predictable, from the perspective of the design, I suppose. Sometimes it's a swarm of enemies, sometimes it's an ambush while looting, sometimes it's just a little patrol force that falls over if you look at it funny. I was always thinking of what the next fight would bring, and it was a surprise a decent amount of times. Problem is that this is still not great, as the balance is all out of whack. So many fights are barely injuring me, so many fights are completely overwhelming me with the amount of enemies. In addition, there are these special skills. It's like Rogue Trader. Each character has their own skill, but using it is mutually exclusive, so you slowly build up this bar, and one character uses it, nobody else can use theirs. It can be charged in one combat and instantly used in another, also adding a little more complexity, as you might want to save it in that dangerous looking fight coming up. And the balance is off in these abilities as well. Main guy, the Lizard Knight, has an ability that gives a decent damage reduction to every ally. It's okay. Meanwhile, there's another character who can burn every single enemy on the map and leave a damage over time effect, which with another ability from a mage can also cause a chain reaction of bouncing fire all over the place, to say nothing about the fact that enemies who burn also leave behind healing items, or whatever you want to... healing flames, there we go. Considering there are only 4 characters you can use at a time, who rarely need much assistance, and sometimes there are nearly 20 enemies per fight, I think it's fairly obvious which ability is more useful. I suppose one system I do not have a problem with is the leveling one here. It offers a very simple stat choice between 2 options, but it's the skills what are interesting, as each character has 3 upgrades for each skills, which consume different amounts of points. But that can be shifted around between missions with no penalties, so you can cause a debuff from the mage to also become a buff, or you can make it so the defensive buff becomes AoE. That's a very cool design, it's kinda like a loadout in a shooter maybe. It's just... again, I wish there were a lot more skills, maybe 8, maybe 10 in the late game, not including normal melee and ranged attack. Really, there's not much else to say. The whole game, quite frankly, feels like a tutorial for turn-based RPGs. Like something you give someone who might be overwhelmed if they're dropped into Rogue Trader, for example. I mean, I'll never stop bitching about that game's leveling. What the hell was that? Terrinoth is not like that at all. Very simple, but with complexity as well. There's a skill ceiling there, but it's just a little too basic for me. However, that's not all the problems. The game was enjoyable enough despite all I've already said, but it sadly suffers from the bugs, and its actual game-breaking bugs, one of which is turns don't end in a turn-based game. Specifically, Fini sometimes breaks a game if ending the turn using the last action point. If you end on turn 1, it doesn't seem to break, but for whatever reason, using it all up on the last fight against the vampires broke the game for me every single time. So I had to sort of do half turns to move on. Aside from that, I've ran into another bug where I ultimately stopped playing. The last boss of the 5th mission, I believe, is a big old troll, or golem, or just a biggin. He is invulnerable as long as the dark roots are spawned. He can pop them up every time his health hits a certain threshold. Problem is that at one point they just don't appear, but he's still invulnerable. So you can progress in any way, shape or form. People complained on Steam about that and got a ChatGPT reply from the devs. I deleted it right there. Again, to be fair, the game was a little dull. The characters were clichés too, and unlike the usual CRPGs, you couldn't talk to them or have too much of an interaction during missions either. So I didn't connect with the characters other than the lizard guy. The only reason being is his shield ability, truly. That shield ability was honestly most of the fun in the game for me. By default it does a decent chunk of damage and pushes enemies around, which can cause them to bash into other enemies and kill them both, or you can just push them off cliffs. I've had some elite enemies crawl up a cliff, and I just waddle up to them and poof, see ya. One mini-boss even ragdolled down an endless pit. 3 floors down, full health, gone. That was wonderful. I don't think I have used his sword attack once, but that's pretty much it. So, yeah, Terrinoth is not great. Forgettable, but there is some good here and it can be fun.